Welcome everyone who is watching at a later date. This is the third installment of the Life at LWHS virtual event. Today's panel is entitled Academics at LWHS. I'm joined today by 4 current students as well as 2 faculty members. Thank you for being here. We will be answering a few prepared questions as well as answering a few questions that were submitted prior to the event. So why don't we just start by having our student panelists introduce themselves. Why don't you just say your name, what middle school you went to, your grade, pronouns, and a little bit about how you're involved in the Lick community. Can we start with you, Chloe?
Sure. Hi, I'm Chloe, and I'm a senior at Lick, and I went to Crocker Middle School. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and some things I'm involved in with the Lick community are the sports, so volleyball and track, and then I'm involved with some clubs like JSU and GSA.
Ryan.
My name is Ryan. I'm also a 12th grader at Lick. I came from Highlands Christian Schools, which is a middle school, parochial middle school in San Bruno. My pronouns are he, him, his, and I'm involved, just like Chloe, with sports teams at Lick. I'm the captain of the varsity basketball team, and I'm also a Lick-Wilmerding admissions intern. Phoebe, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So hi, my name's Phoebe. I'm a junior here at Lick. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And like Chloe and Ryan, I'm involved with athletics. I play field hockey, soccer, and lacrosse. And also I'm involved in architecture at Lick. And Javen?
Hi, my name is Javen. I'm an 11th grader at Lick. I went to the San Francisco school in the Petrolia district, and that is an independent private school. I am involved in the BSU, the dance ensemble team, as well as also being a student administrator and peer mentor. So yeah.
And our 2 faculty who join us today, can you introduce yourselves, what subjects you teach, and how long you've been at Lick?
Sure, I will go first. My name's Ms. Garcia. I teach math. I'm in the math faculty. I am currently teaching Algebra 2 and Inductive Geometry, and this is my 3rd year at Lick-Wilmerding.
Hello, my name is Thelonious Johnson. I am in the English department. This year I'm teaching juniors and seniors, although over my long time at Lick, I've taught 9th through 12th grade. I've taught history. I think I even at one point in my time at Lick taught psychology. As you can gather, I've been here for a long time. This is my 26th, 27th year at Lick, so I've been here for quite a while. In addition, I'm also a parent of a Lick alumni.
Thank you so much once again for being here. And let's just kind of start with the first question, which is, what do you think sets the Lick classroom environment apart from other schools? So kind of thinking about like when you were looking at different high school options, what do you think really did set kind of our classroom environment apart for you?
I could start. The first thing that comes to mind is just the small class sizes. I haven't been in a class with over definitely like 20 students. I think the normal class size is in the teens, usually around like 15 per class, which gives each student, an ability to have a very focused learning environment. Another thing that small class sizes does is allows for, a lot of small group discussion, which in my experience is super helpful. I think it's a bit scary to talk in a whole group discussion right away, but being able to discuss smaller ideas with a smaller group of peers has been very helpful for me in growing my confidence as a student and also just being confident in expressing my ideas.
Definitely. I think discussion-based learning is kind of what originally drew me to Lick. At first, I didn't really know about it, just based off like certain things I heard, it kind of sounded like it. And then when I actually shadowed, I sat through an English class with Ms. Ogden. And since I was a freshman year English class, I kind of got like a little taste of what it was going to be like. And immediately they started with table talk, and I had no clue what that was. But they were always just like kind of talking with each other. And then it was a group discussion. And that was kind of like the entire class, just creating new ideas and like bouncing off each other. And I think that's like a very important way to figure out how to learn instead of just almost being lectured at by teachers.
Yeah, I agree. Especially the talking with you versus talking at you is very important, like in the shops environment, which I really enjoy as part of Lick. Like you work alongside the teachers and they show you how to use all of these big machines that originally look really scary or threatening to you just as like a small ninth grader. But they work with you and you do all these like little tiny projects, and eventually you can work up to building bigger projects. So that was something that was really important. Just learning how to work with your hands with the assistance of someone else there beside you, offering the necessary support that you need when you're learning like a specific style of learning that you may not have encountered in any other classrooms in middle school. So yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate Lick's emphasis on just community and making every student feel at home, which I think is just very important and sets it apart from a lot of different other schools, which are more focused on the lectures and just cramming the information. So I really do appreciate its ability to do that in such a seamless and easy way.
And for our teachers, what are some of the things that you feel like you're emphasizing as skills or habits in your classroom that might be a little different from like other schools?
Okay, I'll go first. So kind of going with what all of the students were saying was there's this very active dynamic of collaboration. Even when you walk into a classroom, you don't see the forward-facing seats. There's not a front. It's instead round tables. And I love that I get a chance to actually like sit with them at a table and like have this discussion of, well, how do you think about this? And what does that word mean to you? And okay, and then and what do you think? And so it becomes this really dynamic learning environment. We are constantly emphasizing reasoning from first principles, collaboration, but there's also this idea of like sense making, stopping, reflecting on what you said, what you did, and then thinking about, okay, so how can I take that further? Reflecting on any mistakes made, and learning from those mistakes. And actually there's this thing that we say, like, we celebrate mistakes because those are the moments that our brains are actually engaged in learning. So instead of thinking of mistakes as this negative thing of like, oh, you know, I got that wrong and everybody heard me, it's more like, oh yeah, I was thinking that too. So if that, how can we all learn from that together? And eventually you, especially for me, I get to teach 9th and 10th and then 10th and 11th. So I really see this like growth in how they approach brainstorming, making mistakes, learning from mistakes, reflecting, and sharing their ideas. So I think it's a very special classroom environment.
Yes, to all of that. Just being in the classroom with the Lick students and seeing the way they work together, seeing the way in which they push each other, how open Lick students are to new ideas, new challenges. I'm always, and I say this to them all the time, one of the things I really enjoy is just, I'm always learning something in the classrooms with my students. And so books I've taught for years and read for years, I don't think there's ever a year or week when someone does not say something which I had not thought of, or sees a book from a different point of view. And the excitement, the joy in their peers eyes and responses when they hear and learn something from each other is just wonderful to see. Lick students are, well, I've already said that they're open to these new ideas. They're open to exploring the text from in any perspective, any way that we put it to them, and so that sense of joy in learning makes it fun for me to be there.
Thank you all for sharing. I want to hear a little bit about like what actually happens in the classroom. So if some of the students can tell us about a project or learning that you've had that has had a lasting impact on you.
I can go. A project that's had like a long-lasting impact on me has definitely been one of the, like, we call them journal clubs. So it's like you pick a scientific topic and you explore the ethical background behind it. So there's always pros and cons to both. And I got to do this in anatomy and physiology with Ms. Maslow. And we got to do it twice. And I think both times I was able to like look around a science project instead of just focusing on like the facts. And it kind of made me more aware to like my overall world. And then throughout the rest of the class, she'd like go back to all the products we were talking about. And she'd be like, how does this apply to the ethical aspects that we just learned? And it was really important just to like see the world in a new light.
A project that has had a lasting impact on me to this day even is the Manifest project I did in a unique course called Philanthropy Initiative. We were tasked with bringing light to the, or just like bringing attention to certain social justice issues and making a podcast advocating for why the, so the class is endowed $10,000 by the school to donate to a specific cause of our choosing. And we were basically tasked with making a podcast to educate our peers about why we think that issue should be the one that we donate to. And I made one about SF homelessness, which is a problem that's really close to my heart. And you know, I was just able to educate my peers about why it was so important to me, as well as, you know, specific facts that I thought they should learn. And to this day, just recently, actually, a nonprofit in San Francisco called Cone Art House asked to use my podcast and post it on their website as well as social medias. So that was really cool, and it's just opened my eyes to, you know, how things that I do at school can have a lasting impact, you know, on my life as well.
Yeah, something that I still think about today is I'm a junior now, but last year I took the Architecture 1 course. And since it was only a semester long, usually it's a year long, but Garanka, the architecture teacher, took a sabbatical the second semester. So we had kind of a condensed curriculum. So our one big project was to construct like the floor plan and build a model of a portable home. And you do a really small architecture course through the art class your freshman year. But this was really my first exposure to like having a lot of time to think about, plan, create a project. And it has like so many different elements that you learn about, like through Vectorworks, which is like the online program that you design your floor plans on, as well as working with your hands, which is something that like emphasizes a lot in the head, hands, heart motto. And now when I walk around after I've learned just a little bit about like architecture's history, the different styles, now every time like I walk down the street, I find myself observing the environment around me, what different styles there are, if I would design something differently. So yeah.
Yeah, the project that really stuck with me was CMA. We had drawing and painting, and we had 3 panels to make a story about a journey of any kind. And so what was really fun what was really fun about it for me was just kind of seeing everybody's creative differences. You know, you got to see all the different ways in which people think of, you know, the idea of a journey. I chose monarch butterflies, but other people chose immigration. Other people chose, you know, pollen, you know, flowers, seeds. So it's just really cool to see how people's ideas differ, especially when we were like just getting to know each other in our freshman classes. So that was really cool.
And for our teachers, what are either like meaningful moments you've had in the classroom or like units that you just love to teach?
I'll go first. I was making a list as I was listening, and it just there's so many, but I'll pick two. Two that were mentioned recently. So in the junior year, one of the short stories I teach is a story entitled Bartleby the Scrivener by Nathaniel Hawthorne. I'm sorry, not Nathaniel Hawthorne. I'm just drawing a blank, but it'll come back to me in a second. But the story, Bartleby the Scrivener, is a very frustrating story in lots of ways because at no point does Melville tell us really a clear sense of what the story is about. And there are lots of ways in which we can interpret it, definitely. And so one reason I enjoy the story is because of its complexity, and there are lots of things we can talk about. The main character repeats throughout the story those famous words, "I would prefer not to," which I like to say reflects a lot of what many high school students are thinking. I would prefer not to. So this is that fun aspect of the story, at least fun for me, but the assignment, the activity that I really enjoy, and I think the students really get into, is when we have this Bartleby debate. And basically we put the characters, the main character, the narrator, on trial for the death of Bartleby, the title character. And the students just really get into, well, defending the narrator or showing or explaining why the narrator is neglectful and how his neglect is responsible for the death of that character. So just and they get to have fun with it. So it's a fun trial. And the other piece, a little more serious, we also read the Song of Solomon, which is one of my favorite novels. And there is, in one part of the novel, the story of what part of the novel has to do with one character and his definition of love and how he defines love. And we assign this article about that character's point of view. And I remember the first time I assigned that reading, receiving an email from a student the next day saying, wow, all of a sudden, I understand this novel in a way that I never had before. And each year I get a response to that short article, which explains this one small section of Song of Solomon. And just that moment when students sort of click and understand something in a way that this one student in particular, and all of a sudden understood Song of Solomon. That moment, that email is one of the few emails from students that I still have, and I will probably hold on to for a while. Yeah.
Those aha moments, right? The moments where they like, you could just see it in their face when they you know, picked something up. Similarly, I mean, there's so many moments that I'm thinking about right now that I'm like, oh, I want to say this, I want to say that. That I love those moments when some connection gets made. And something that I do hear, and it makes me particularly proud, is when they say things like, you know, I always thought that we just had to like memorize the formula and plug it in and do the thing, and like I never really understood what it was. And after going through some units of like interpreting and like making sense of these things, but then also seeing real world scenarios, like how would I apply that in the real world? To me, it's, you know, it's so important. And speaking to that, we have these math portfolios that students have to work on. And usually they have maybe 2-3 weeks where they've been assigned the portfolio. They're given maybe 2-3 problems that they get to pick from and really think about, explore, and like and explain it in like a very, you know, kind of professional way. I even I try to say it's like a presentation / research paper. Like, how would you present all of this research and exploration that you did? And most of the time at the end of it, well, at the start of it, it's like, oh my God, this is so hard, Ms. Garcia. I don't know if I even understand the directions. And slowly, you know, they build on it. And all of a sudden at the end, it's like, wow, I realize now that I could do this and I really understand this. And almost a little bit eerie, but we had just finished a portfolio on exponential growth when COVID hit. And I remember in the news, you know, all of people that were just like not taking it seriously or understanding it. And I remember having students that would say, don't they understand exponential growth? And like, if we don't, you know, take this seriously, like it could just grow out of control. And I just remember thinking, wow, you are all just like, you're already thinking about all of these things out in the real world. And to me, that was just so meaningful. Like, if you don't get anything else out of this class, you being able to think about the world and how it works is beautiful.
Well, thank you all for sharing little snippets of your time in classes. And for the students, I want to hear a little bit like what has been your favorite class you've taken so far?
I can start. My favorite class that I've taken so far, and I've taken 3 classes of it, has been dance. I love the dance class so much, especially because I'm a very artistic person. And so I really enjoy expressing myself through my body and through, you know, which is like my art, which is kind of my love language in a way. So I really love to, you know, show myself and show out through that way. And so just every single time I've taken dance with Miss Robinson, it's just been such a great experience for me. It's been so much fun and I've just enjoyed it so much. And it's been like a really nice break and release from, you know, like the classes that I take every day, all the academic classes. So yeah, I really appreciate dance.
Javen, if I could follow up real quick. Did you used to dance before you got to Lick?
Kinda. It was like I never took it too seriously. I always enjoyed dancing, but I never took too many actual professional classes. So when I got to Lick, this was like kind of my first chance to take a real professional class with like a teacher who was super skilled. So I was like, yeah, sure, why not? And oh my gosh, it just became such a profound love. Like, yo, I just enjoy it so much, and I like wouldn't replace it for the world.
Thank you. I want to ask you a lot of questions about that experience because I'm super, but we don't have time. So anybody else want to talk about their favorite class?
Yeah, I can. So this past quarter, since we're doing quarters during this distance learning, but it would usually be a semester-long course, would be my Introduction to Fiction Writing course with my teacher. Her name is Miss West, and she's actually an author, and she writes books because she works part-time for Lick, so she can write books. But anyways, it was like my first, I've always loved writing. It was always like a really great creative outlet for me, especially creative writing because it's very different from the analytical writing that we do oftentimes in Lick English classes. And so it was a great, we wrote 2 stories. One of mine was just kind of generic like fiction, and then I actually tried my luck at writing historical fiction, which proved to be pretty difficult. I read about the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, which showed me that I needed to do a lot of research just so it would be accurate. But I don't know, it was just a great class where it offered a lot of independence, and it wasn't a class where you had to refine your ideas at all. You could pretty much just start running and go with whatever came to your mind. So I thought it was like a really good, healthy, creative environment where you never had to like change your ideas for like other people's benefit. You could really just focus on what you wanted to do. And then the teacher offered you help with craft and such, like plot, dialogue, other aspects that I could go on about for forever. But I was just saying it was like the perfect creative environment where you could just be yourself.
I can go next. One of probably the most famous or favorite class I've taken at Lick. Last quarter, I took a history seminar with Dr. Lopez. It's got a really long name, but it's called Modern Anxieties in Latin America and How That Shapes Our Identities and Communities. And since I'm half Latino, that class was like super impactful to how I view my identity. And overall, Dr. Lopez constantly encouraged us to talk in class. He was like, even if you don't have a fully formed thought, started off with, this isn't a fully formed idea, but I think this. And it was just a great way to always get conversation going. And even if like you fully didn't understand what was happening, you could like talk with classmates and like the little group discussions he would send us in every day. So that way you could come to class with some sort of idea of what you're doing. And he constantly like encouraged us to be like, college classes will kind of be like this. So I'm introducing this to you now so you understand, but I also hope you have a good time while doing it. And I think that was just really influential and kind of made me less anxious to go to college next year.
Ryan, if you have one. Not everybody has to answer every question, by the way.
I could just briefly touch on it. So my favorite class that I've taken at Lick is also but it's the philanthropy initiative class. Some specific things that just I can recall is an assignment where we were given like $20 by our teacher and told to go out into the community and do what you wanted with it. And me and my group members chose to go to the Whole Foods up the street, Ocean Ave, and buy some food for a homeless individual that we saw while walking the Whole Foods. Other than that, like I said earlier, we were endowed $10,000 by the school to donate it to a cause of our choosing. And we ended up donating it to the Fistula Foundation, which assists people in the continent of Africa with these really important life-saving procedures that they otherwise, would have no access to. And they not only perform these procedures, but they also teach people within the communities how to perform the procedures as well. So it's not only a temporary fix, but a fix that will last a long time. And just being able to have that impact on different communities and philanthropy, learning how to give and the ways in which you can give was just a very fruitful experience for me.
And so, people always want to know a little bit about homework. So I'm actually curious what our teachers will say. So what kind of homework do you like to give in your classes? What kind of work are you hoping that they do at home?
I'll start. My idea of homework has changed in my years at Lick. Obviously, as an English teacher, there's always a lot of reading. There's always a lot of reading. Over the years, I've come to emphasize, or I've learned to talk a little bit more about not just the reading, but the annotating and making sure that you understand the reading. So annotating as you read. We also, of course, obviously have lots of writing, and so there's a writing portion of the homework. And so the breaking up of the assignments, a larger writing assignment into smaller pieces, so the scaffolding, so that the students have a better sense of moving, a better sense of what they're moving towards. So I think I would say I break up the homework, I hope, into two categories. One, the reading, the sort of gathering of information, as it were. And then the second would be the that sort of I'm going to call it the hands-on work. The idea of taking their ideas and sharing them with the world around them. And so the homework the homework being figuring out a way to take what you know in your head and make it and put it out there in such a way that other people can understand what you know in your head. And that translation, that movement from inside your head to outside can be very difficult, even for all of us. And so that process of going from one to the other, it's very challenging.
Homework. I like to give a combination of things that they haven't seen yet, and also things that are maybe reinforcing some of the ideas that we've already covered. So for example, I'll give a few problems for a homework and I'll say, try all of them. Don't worry about getting the final answer. Don't worry about the final answer being correct or not, but try something for each of them. And something that I've been emphasizing, even especially now in remote learning, is don't go beyond this time limit. Like I'm not giving you this for you to be, stuck there trying to figure it out on your own until the end of the night. And, I actually want you to be challenged and to make mistakes so that tomorrow's class, and we always start with this, is here is my solution, or here are my ideas, or how I would have approached it as a team. Share what you did, and then reflect and correct. So that's my homework process. And I think that it's something that initially makes students a little bit uncomfortable, especially ninth grade. But then eventually they start to buy in, and they're like, oh, I really am not going to get a bad grade if I didn't get any single correct answer. It's about the process. And then they really get it. And then they really make sense of it. So that's my goal with homework.
All right, and to the students. So how much homework do you actually have? And, I know you all are so involved in so many things. So how do you balance all the extra stuff you do on top of just school with homework?
I think it's a lot about time management. I know in middle school I procrastinated a lot, but Lick, so when you're a sophomore, junior, and senior years, you're required to have at least one free period, and I think you can have a maximum of 2. And when I got to high school and I had sports 5 times a week, so every day after school, I really started using my free periods as well as tutorial, which is kind of like a built-in study time after our first period block that everyone has free, and you can use it to meet with teachers or do homework, hang out with your friends, etc. But so I actually worked out a process with myself where I would do homework in the library nearly every free I had. So then when I come home and I'm exhausted after sports, I only had less than 2 hours of homework every night if I was productive. So it kind of incentivized myself. And I was also doing the best work that I could when I was alert and awake and attentive, instead of just doing work where I was half asleep if I was really tired that night. So.
Any other thoughts on homework load? Yeah, right.
Yeah, just building off what Phoebe said, I think time management is super important. Along with freeze, we also have a tutorial period, like she said, and working after school, even just making sure that you have the time to do so. If you have a sports game after school, maybe spending time during lunch to get some of the work done. And I know that the allotted time teachers are allowed to assign homework for regular classes is an hour, and then honors classes is an hour and 15. But I would say that I usually never get the maximum amount. Somewhere in between, maybe 30 to 45 minutes is a regular time I would spend on each class for homework.
Any other thoughts about homework?
I mean, the main thing for me was before COVID happened was I would do the homework the day it was assigned, since we had a system where it was A, B, C, D on one day and E, F, G, H on the other day. So I'd purposely get all my homework done the day it was assigned, and even sometimes force myself to do homework on Fridays, just so I wouldn't really have to worry about it, whether I had sports tournaments on weekends or internships I had to do throughout the week. It was very much a lot of like multitasking at certain points, but even like what Ryan and Phoebe said, doing work at lunch when I knew I had a game after school, or spending my tutorials like in the caf studying instead of with my friends was very helpful.
But it sounds like manageable. Reason, okay. So I would be remiss if I didn't kind of want us to talk about the mission and how it the mission of our school and how it actually impacts the classroom experience. So for the teachers, what are some ways that you use the classroom to actually help the school further its mission?
I can go first this time. I'll start by saying that the mission was one of the biggest things that drew me to apply to Lick-Wilmerding. And even in the interview process, the importance of the mission in every place that I went to, every person that I talked to walking around the classrooms was evident, which was to me very important. And I think that, you know, this might not seem like common sense to most people in math class, but something that I feel like we really emphasize in our department is head, heart, hands, for example. What? It's math, but no, we start with checking in with our students, giving our students time to check in with each other, express how they're actually doing on any given day so that we meet each other with empathy and compassion and help support each other. Something that I've experienced and other prior experiences is, you know, math and science classes, very competitive and people trying to get the best grade and people trying to show, you know, that they can do better than, and here it's, oh, I think I got this, but let me see, let me help you, or wait, no, you're almost there. There's this sense of community where I really feel that students are supporting each other. And you know, sometimes I just walk around and I listen to them and I think, wow, like you really are living the mission. It's amazing. And sometimes students are the ones that are supporting the teachers too. And that's amazing too. The other thing is this idea of lifelong learners. Something that I hope I instill and that I repeat is, you know, it's not just about being able to figure out this problem right now or understand that formula, but are you becoming a better problem solver, a critical thinker? Will you be able to go out in the world and continue this curiosity and imagination to figure things out? There will be problems in the world that need solving. And so you being able to do those things to help the world, like how are you gonna help the world is, I think is very important. And we're always trying to be understanding of our students' experience. And if at any point a student is struggling for whatever reason, you know, having this connection of how can I support you? And at this moment, I don't care about this math assignment. It's like, how can I support you as a human and as a person? And I think that those things are important to us in the classroom and, you know, outside of our classroom when we're just walking around the school.
I think I can echo a lot of what you were just saying there. I'll talk very briefly in terms of what I've seen in terms of growth at Lick. I think I can honestly say in my, I will honestly say in my 20 some odd years of Lick, we have grown as an institution, as a school, to embrace our mission even more than what we were doing when I first started, and I love that growth. For me in particular, specifically, just thinking about this idea of head, heart, and hands, just simple things like, in terms of my assessments, in terms of my grade book, those are the categories I focus on now. Wasn't always the case, but in terms of what I'm looking at. Head, the idea of, well, how are you engaging with the reading and thinking about the reading and homework assignments? The heart, how are you engaging with your classmates and encouraging your classmates, showing compassion and empathy for your classmates. And the hands, that idea of, well, what are you producing? These papers and the papers and projects and things like that. But then also this idea, as I already said, this idea of heart, but the empathy and compassion. I mean, not that this is impossible for other classes, but I selfishly think that for an English teacher, it's built in, teaching about empathy, think about compassion. I mean, one of the things we encourage the students to do is to empathize with the characters, or to explain why they don't empathize with the character, and to develop, since they're reading this or thinking about this idea of all walks of life, the characters that they're reading from 9th through 12th grade are from all walks of life, and race, class, gender. So I mean, any of these categories we could mention, and so lots of ways in which the characters can empathize and connect, and can see someone that is, if you will, foreign, very completely different from themselves. So the chance to empathize, the chance to connect with others, and with themselves as well. And then of course the idea of, as you were saying as well, lifelong learning. The books we teach, I think, are wonderful, but the books are not the thing. It's the idea of thinking about the books, and the idea of expressing yourself. It's the idea of you read a book like, well, I already said Song of Solomon or Bartleby, and you take those skills and you can apply those skills to anything in any text that you approach, and just this idea of being open to challenging texts, open to new ideas. And that I think when students come back and talk to us in the department, come back and talk to me in the department, they talk about things they learned in English. They talk about reading books again, a second or third time in college or beyond. And they talk about how their ideas, their minds continue to expand as they read. And so, yeah, that idea of constantly learning, which the students do, and as I said earlier on, they're helping me to do as well. Yeah.
For our students, what are the ways that you've seen like the mission of our school play out in the classroom, or like how do you know that the mission matters in like your classroom experience?
Yeah, I think one example that really like stuck with me, or one class rather, that I felt like really emphasized the mission, was my modern world history class with Mr. Villacana. And the reason I say that is because I think history in and of itself, the idea of learning history is really a lot about learning about the past to better how we act in the future and how we address the future and the present. And I feel like Mr. Villacana, what he would do is at the end of every class, he would like say some witty comment, something really funny or annoying, or just like, ugh, like it would make your brain hurt. And the reason he would do this is because he was connecting what we learned in class there, or what we learned in the homework, to what we're currently dealing with, or what we're currently addressing or facing. And I feel like what he was doing, that I don't think that kind of went over everybody's heads, was that he was kind of instilling into us this idea of, you know, public purpose, of, you know, being something that you're proud of, being something that, you know, is going to be in the history books, and that's really going to leave an impact, you know. And so I think that's something that's really important, especially in the first part of our mission, which is talking about a private school with a public purpose. It's about, you know, how these teachers, their entire motive and job is to instill into us and put into us these ideas of, you know, caring for others, of, you know, doing better, and, you know, learning from past mistakes. And, you know, and I feel like that really shined through in history and a lot of other classes that I've taken at Lick.
Anyone else?
I would say a class that has really emphasized head, heart, and hands is fabricating with fabrics too, which had a focus on upcycling. We learned obviously how to, create garments and different items of clothing or other things like that with our hands. But then our head and hearts were utilized in the way that, we learned about the negative effects of the fast fashion industry and the, why upcycling is good for the environment. And it even manifested itself in a idea that the whole class came up with for a school-wide clothing swap, so that we can encourage, encourage recycling clothes and not buying into the fast fashion industry. And we were able to kind of get that point across in a way that was engaging for students as well as faculty, but then also, drove our point home with presentation during community meeting, as well as just the overall impact that we had doing that clothing swap.
Yeah, I think one, well, I really like to work in the shops, and my sophomore year I took wood joinery and turning. And I think as an incoming freshman into Lick, I was really apprehensive about the concept of learning through your hands, because all throughout like my middle school, elementary school experience, I had kind of learned in a more linear way. It was like you learn something, you write it down, you test well, and then you can just forget it. But something that was interesting for me at Lick was like I would learn how to do like finger joinery, and I would actually understand like why it worked and how to do it, instead of just learning what it was. I understood more of like the engineering of how like you build something. Like I built a stool, and I had to learn all about all these different things, like how it would balance, how to make it level, etc. So I think just like valuing learning with other parts of your body. Of course, you're going to be using your brain, but you can also learn like through the more hands-on approach. And it's interesting to see kids use these skills to help emphasize the other part, which is like the public purpose part. For example, I'm part of a club now where we use the shops, like when we return to campus, and have access to the tools to build stuff for nonprofits. So just helping those in your community using the skills that you've acquired through Lick, and really understanding what you're doing, how you're helping others, and ultimately how to use the tools, because safety is also a priority.
Yeah, I think for me, I grew up like speaking Spanish. That was my very first language. And I had like kind of lost it over the years. So when I came to Lick, I was very determined to like get it back to where it was when I was younger. And when I first took Spanish, I remember it being like very, very hard for me, just because I hadn't learned it in the way of knowing grammar and then taking a test on it. I knew it just like off the top of my head. And then we were learning Mexican Spanish and Spanish from Spain, and I'm from Argentina. So that was all very confusing. And my first Spanish teacher didn't really recognize it, but she knew there was a problem, so she would tell my parents. But then my second year Spanish teacher, Miss Alessandra, she was amazing. She was like, I know why you're writing like this. I know like what's wrong. Let me help you. And that was kind of like the first teacher that really recognized that like this was a problem, that she could help me. And like she could see I was really struggling. So she really cared for me like as a full person. And even like after the class now, she checks in on me. She's like, how's your Spanish going? Like, are you doing better than you were a couple years ago? And like even checking in with me, like, how are you? Like, are you excited to go to college? Like all these like fun things that like make me remember that she really cares about me as a whole person and a whole learner.
For the students, are there other kind of moments where you like felt like there was this connection with your teacher that went kind of just beyond like they are teaching my class? Do you have like stories about like an adult in the community that really kind of reached out to you, either because they saw something in you or like just
I could actually go again. During junior year, I took anatomy and physiology with Ms. Maslow, and I kind of like noticed throughout a couple years that I like wanted to be a woman in STEM. And my sophomore year chem teacher, Ms. Bergstedt, was like, "Do it. We need more women in STEM. Like, you'd be great." And then junior year, Ms. Maslow was like, "What do you want to do?" And she kind of like pushed me to really like kind of discover what I want. And even when I was like, "I want to be a surgeon," she was like, "Here are a bunch of internships at like Stanford or Georgetown that you can take over the summer and like pursue your dreams." And I think that was one of like I was saying, like the first teacher that really cared about like how I was going to be doing in the future and cared about like my dreams and goals outside of like, am I getting a good grade in her class? And she like always openly reached out to me and was like, "If you ever need to learn anything about being a woman in STEM, I'm here." I just thought that was amazing.
I was able to have I have a great relationship with my sophomore year math teacher, Miss Torres. You know, before coming to her class, I never thought of myself as a individual who was skilled at math or could succeed in math even. But you know, she just reassured me that there's no such thing as like a math person. Everyone is capable of doing so, and she just kept reiterating that back to me, and kept encouraging me during class. And you know, I was able to you know, start doing well in math because I just started developing this confidence in myself and this realization that, you know, I was capable of doing these things. And even going into my upperclassmen years, taking math in my junior year and well, even now in my senior year, I still go back to her and ask her for help if I'm ever struggling with math. And she's just so willing to help me all the time. Anytime I ever have a question, she's there to respond to me with an email, or, you know, when we were in person, she was free to meet with me, even though I wasn't even in her class anymore. So just the fact that teachers, you know, really do deeply care about you here at Lick is something that I think is pretty unique to the school.
So we're like at 8 minutes. So I want to try to get through as many questions as we can. So something that Ms. Garcia kind of alluded to, but like a question that was submitted by a family, is there a strong competitive environment at LWHS? So for the students, yes or no, and then, and for the faculty, I'm actually curious, like, how do you prevent that from happening? What are kind of the things that you do as instructors to maybe offset? Well, I don't want to say too much, but students, like, how does it feel?
Yeah, I think in terms of competition, I feel like Lick really emphasizes this idea of rather than competing with others, the only person you're really competing with is yourself. And so I think that Lick really pushes this idea of the standard being yourself, and that, you know, this is all in pursuit of improvement and of self-betterment. And I feel like that idea is really fulfilling as you continue to move on and continue to progress, because then you start to notice, you know, your classmates and peers as like allies and people who are going to help you rather than as competition. And, you know, it all just kind of trickles down into this idea of community that is really well taught and really built in and deeply rooted in the Lick community. So yeah, it's all about yourself. It's all about, you know, working to be a better student than you already are.
Anybody else have a thought?
I think that there's so many people at Lick who are interested in like a multitude of things that I have friends who are into completely different things than me. Like, for example, I enjoy like creative writing, reading, etc. And I have friends who have a preference more for science and pursue other like extracurriculars in fields such as that. And I think that having different interests, I've never really felt a competition, because even if I do have a friend who shares an interest with me, it's more like we're able to have a conversation about it other than feeling like we're competing each other. We can just build off each other's conversation, like, oh yeah, I noticed that too. Like, I really like writing in this style, etc. So I don't really notice any competition. One, because people are interested in so many different things that I may or may not be. And also just like the positive, like community-based thing, like Javen was saying, you never really feel like you're set against someone, rather you're like set alongside them.
Teacher, scratch that question for you because there's a lot of really good questions and I want you to answer some of them. So Mr. Johnson, you're the only one that can answer this question that was submitted, but what do alumni of Lick-Wilmerding carry with them throughout life that they learned from their school experience? So as a Lick parent who got to see a child, you know, go through this experience, how would you respond to that?
Oh, okay. Well, the first thing as you were speaking came to mind immediately was compassion. Definitely. That's something that students come back and talk about. They don't talk about compassion, but they express their compassion for the world around them through their actions and what they're doing in their lives. Definitely, as we've said, this idea of lifelong learning, students come back and they were doing one thing, now they move on to something else, and they're getting ready to transition to something else. And so there's constantly, I stopped myself from saying improving, but I'm going to say yes, improving, but changing and growing in all sorts of different ways. I see. Things that I try humor, definitely. I think about my own son. He sense of humor and enjoying life and learning from Lick. Students talk about that. Wow, those are the things that come to mind immediately. Just yeah, but yeah, those are the things that come to mind immediately.
Oh, I mean, not terrible things to want from a grad. Ms. Garcia, we have a question. How do you encourage students to step out of their comfort zone to try new course materials that they might not have tried otherwise?
By always celebrating mistakes and challenges as the only real opportunity for us to grow and learn, and also putting myself out there. Like probably any of my students can say that at any point if I made a mistake, I was the first one to point it out in the class and be like, see this right here? I made this mistake. Why did this happen? So, and just constantly reminding them that we are all human beings in the classroom and that we will all benefit from being together in these, you know, and pushing ourselves and leaning into discomfort. So I, you know, bring in our community norms quite a bit of like, and, you know, sometimes they'll even say, I'm leaning into discomfort.
All right. And I think we have barely enough time for like one last question. And family wanted to know what support is offered to students in tackling challenging studies, so in building confidence, resilience, and perseverance. So for our students, when you've really struggled with something, what kind of support do you feel like was provided for you?
I feel like for me, a teacher like noticed I was struggling, and this tended to happen in like math class, and they immediately reached out to me and they were like, do you want help with this? Just because like I just couldn't get through like something on the board in class or something we were doing in the homework. And they like immediately offered a helping hand, even though I couldn't admit to myself that I was ready for help. And then on top of that, there are a bunch of students who were like, if you ever need help, text me. Like, I'll explain to you the homework. You try first, but then I'll help you figure it out. And I kind of have seen that throughout all my classes at Lick. Teachers are very open for communication, and it's for help or anything else you might need. And also students, which kind of plays into more of it being a collaborative environment, just that everybody's open to help you whenever you need it.
Yeah, so each department has its own department office, so you can find your teacher there most of the time if you're ever looking for them during a free or any other period where you have some free time to meet with them and you know, just talk through a problem that you're having. And also building off of what Chloe was saying, just the communication is always there. They encourage you to email them and to reach out when you're confused. furthermore, there's the Learning Strategy Center on campus. I personally haven't had a lot of experience there, but if someone else has, maybe you can touch on that. Anyone else? Okay, but I think, so basically the resources they offer is just, better ways to study. They offer you some ways where you could do that better, and also just help with certain things that you might be struggling on. And yeah, I can't think of anything else off the top of my head, but.
It's all right. So to close this out, we are out of time, but can we do the academics at LWHS? One word to describe academics at LWHS. Anybody can go.
Inclusive.
Collaborative.
Supportive.
Growth.
Fun.
2 words, but process-based.
We'll give you that because of the hyphen. All right. Well, thank you to my panelists. It's been so much fun. I always love hearing about just like our community and hearing just how different members of the community are kind of engaging with one another. It's always so inspiring, and it's just so lovely to hear. Thank you to everyone who was able to join us. And if you do have questions that weren't answered, please email us at admissions@lwhs.org. We'll refer you to the right people to answer these questions. If you're a student or a family that wants to connect with like somebody from our community, please submit the Connect with a Tiger Ambassador form on our Explore at LWHS website. Yeah, I just want to wish everybody a lovely evening. And thank you all so much once again. It's been a lot of fun.